So we've talked about the dominant ENFJ, the creative ENFJ. Now let's talk about the normalizing ENFJ. What style is this, or flavoring of ENFJ is this?
Right. So this is actually the opposite of the creative subtype. And unlike the creative subtype that doesn't really think in a linear way and doesn't have as much, that subtype doesn't really need things to be buttoned down. The normalizing ENFJ is the exact opposite. This is a more conventional and specialized version. So they are more inclined to technical work. They are more comfortable taking their time with details. Unlike the creative that really hates the mundane details, this is a subtype that actually really is really does well with details. And they work in a factual, linear way, but usually to help people. All right, so it's not, they still have that extroverted feeling of harmony, or they still have the people orientation, but they're more likely or more open and willing to do more mundane tasks in behalf of, like a bigger picture that serves people. So they have good visual spatial skills with an eye for detail. They quickly notice errors. They listen and speak well. There's always going to be a communication advantage with anybody with ENFJ preferences, but they tend to be better at listening than just talking. And there's a contemplative capacity here. They do have a solid command of facts and case studies. They are leaning more heavily on knowledge and information than maybe some of their other subtypes or the other ENFJ brethren out there. And they usually are showing up in places that have a strong sense of togetherness. So just like with all the normalizing subtypes, there is a tendency to be attracted to institutions, attracted to bigger companies and businesses, not so much for the safety and security aspect of it, but more because of the togetherness aspect, because they like to find themselves in a bigger ecosystem that they feel that their attention to detail can really feed into.
Yeah, and if you contrast that with the creative subtype, for example, the creative subtype could probably be very comfortable on a platform like YouTube, or selling on Etsy, or building a career on a platform to be very creative and expressive. You don't necessarily need to buy into an institution. You can use a platform to augment your creativity, like economically, as a career. But when we get to the normalizing, it's more likely that a normalizing ENFJ is going to say, I'm going to go for that professorship at the college or university that I want to teach at, or I want to tie myself into that business and be a manager here, or a professional, like a lawyer or doctor or professional of some sort. Like this is probably that style of ENFJ.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to be more attracted to technical fields.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of really it's things that are more technical, things that are about education,
Teaching.
like teaching other people, and things that are helpful to a bigger group. So academia actually very much fits all of those criteria. So you're going to see a lot of ENFJs, normalizing ENFJs, being attracted to things like academia. You're also going to see them in healthcare a lot. You'll see them just generally in medicine, but you'll also see them in computing, right? Because of the technical aspect, and engineering, in fact. So this is very different from the other subtypes necessarily. And there's a desire to help people in bigger ways. So there might be even some consulting or coaching that comes in here, but mostly less management, less creativity, more doing things that are known to be helpful to people, right? Like you're not just throwing spaghetti against a wall. You know that this is a solid way that helps a larger group of people. And in fact, Daria even mentions that even when they're in the arts, they still take a more conservative approach. So they like things that are structured. So if they're going to be in the arts, they might be in classical music, something to that effect. I've known of people with ENFJ preferences that teach musical theory, and they are just an encyclopedia of musical theory information. And so, so that's more of sort of this bent, less all over the place, more sort of structured.
So from a neurotransmitter chemical standpoint, this is the serotonin chemical that this subtype is going to lean more toward. In other words, they're chasing the chemical of serotonin more than the others. Have all of them, but that's the one they're more focused on. Let's talk about the wiring of the actual cognitive functions as well.
Right. So for did I mention that? I don't know if I did for the tech geeks or the
I don't think for this one yet.
Myers-Briggs geeks out there.
We can repeat ourselves if we have.
All right. If I already said it, my apologies. I'll just repeat it. So in this case, the normalizing subtype is the type that has a preference for, or at least their judging function. So in this case, extroverted feeling or harmony, that tends to be the more analytic. So that is more targeted, that's more focused, that's more assertive energy. But the perceiving function, in this case, introverted intuition or perspectives, that's the more holistic. That is the more receptive energy. And so there's more of a receiving of how society is set up, the paradigms and sort of the perspectives. There's more of a receptive energy for a worldview. But then once that is received, then there's more of an assertion of how things should be set up and done. So there's going to also be a little bit of a management component here as well. Not as much as the dominant, that definitely has more of a management flavor to it, but there is going to be a willingness to manage as a normalizing ENFJ. But as long as there's a lot of linear structure underneath that supports the management that the normalizing ENFJ is doing.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the dominant, the creative, the normalizing. The final subtype for ENFJs is the harmonizing. You have something else to say.
I'm sorry. I forgot one more thing about this ENFJ because it's like, well, doesn't that just sound like some other type, like an SJ type?
Normalizing you're talking
about.
The
normalizing. I was going to say, unlike the creative subtype that merges work and play and body-mind together.
Yeah.
The normalizing subtype separates them out. And so the career path might be a lot more conventional, but there's still going to be an intuitive side that shows up more in play and in outside of the work context.
That's a great point.
Right. And so this ENFJ might be very conventional at their job, but then do tarot readings or do dream interpretation or, something that really feeds that intuitive side, not in their career.
To that point, if you find yourself as an ENFJ that is more normalizing, you feel that way, I think your spirit and soul will die if you don't have an outlet outside of more the conventional role or career you've chosen. In other words, you do have, like Antonia said, that intuitive side. If you're more normalizing and you pick a career path like that, ensure that you're getting those needs met. Great conversations with other intuitives, intuitive pursuits, like you said, like tarot or more woo stuff or whatever that would be for you as an ENFJ. Maybe your background doesn't lend itself that way, but it's more toward like exploratory concepts or ideas or, abstract pursuits of some sort. And make sure you're weaving that in to season your life. Otherwise, you're going to see yourself your energy is going to start to dry up. You're going to feel like less than yourself. You're going to feel less of a real empowered person, I think. Yeah.
Just like when we talk to people with SP preferences, like we discussed ESFPs that might be more normalizing.
Yeah.
A lot of times at the end of the day, they hop on a motorcycle to drive home, right? Or they have, weekends where they have to do big adventures or they like to travel. And somebody with a normalizing ENFJ style will also need to get their needs met with something that is more intuitive.
Yeah.
Exactly.